Sherrilene, welcome to the Change Champions podcast. Good morning. Very happy to have you on with us. How are you this morning? I didn't even really get a chance to ask because we've been kind
Yeah.
of bouncing around. How are you doing?
Hi, Riley. Good morning to you. And thank you for having me on and for your incredible flexibility to deal with all of the technological issues. I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. It's a beautiful sunny morning here in Florida. It's nice and cold, but it's blue skies and sunshine. So I'm good.
What is cold in Florida? Can you tell me real quick? What's the
Yeah, I know you're going to laugh at me, but about 32 degrees.
Hey, no, that's the freezing line. So that is cold,
Yep.
especially for Florida. Well,
Yeah.
that comes with the new year. Happy New Year. And so for people listening that might not know you, I just want to rattle off a few things to kind of set up the first question I want to ask you because I think the question will make a lot of sense to people once they hear a few more things about you because you're a professor and the chair of the occupational therapy department at the University of Florida. You're
Right.
also a transformational coach. You're familiar with Ikigai. You have a women's empowerment program that you've developed. You're a
Yes.
certified coach through the Leadership Circle. On top of all of that, you also have some instructional classes, like fitness classes. You do body flow, which is like Pilates, yoga, and Tai Chi, I think it was.
Yes. Yes. Very good.
Intensity interval training. You have a walking group. You have a goal to hike the climb the highest 7 summit the 7 peaks in the world, and I think you've done
That's right.
2 so far, which
Yes.
is incredible, and on top of all that, you still sleep 8 hours a night and eat well, and so my first question for people hearing all that, and they're like, "This is madness. This woman lives 3 lives all in a single day." How do you I wanna talk about focus first, like, how do you fit all of that in and still like have a full head of hair and are presentable and have you're not a mangled mess. How do you manage that? How do you juggle all those things?
Yeah. So, for me, it comes down to passion and being true to my authentic self and following my passions. And it is incredible that if you are starting to live not the conditioned life where you have to do this and you have to do that, but more a self-authored life in terms of I love to do this and I get to do that, then it becomes much, much easier. So, I just think because I, I'm probably am the closest to living my passions that I've ever been. And so it really makes it possible for me to focus on that, which is, both important as well as critical for my well-being and also where I can be of the greatest service to myself and to the greatest service of the world. So I'm trying to keep it within that perspective. Now, that doesn't mean that, everything is flowing 100% of the time, but if my focus is there, they say energy flows where attention goes, right? And so I try to keep strong intentions every day on the most critical aspects of what I need to do to be able to stay true to these inherent passions and my bigger vision, you know, follow it accordingly.
Yeah, the grass is greener where you water it. That's kind of how that goes. But it sounds like, I mean, more than that, because that's probably the simplest way that you can say it. But it seems like there's a perspective, a lens, a frame of mind that of kind of the how you look at things. And I think I've heard this, forget who said this quote originally, but something along the lines of, if you change the way you look at things, then the things you look at will begin to change.
That's Dr. Wayne Dyer.
Yes. And so it sounds like, given that you rattled off the name, that's kind of in alignment with sort of what you're describing, what you're talking about, which is it, I guess values alignment is a really good way to put it, but it also seems like prioritization as well, which is maybe more of the tactical, I don't know, spin on it. But do those things kind of mean the same thing to you, or do you see some sort of difference or order just for you personally? Because I know coaching, working with different individuals, that begins to open up a different conversation. But if we just stay focused on you, just in your own personal experience, no right or wrong answer. How do you see that intersection? Am I kind of describing that the right way for
Yeah,
you?
yeah. I love that mantra that if you change how you look at things, the things that you're looking at change. I think it's very, very true. And it comes from is that's well, I think he mentioned it in his book Inspiration, as well as there's a spiritual solution to everything, two of his major books that really taught me a lot of life lessons. I do think I do think it is true, because, you start, so how do I look at things differently? So I encounter a problem, or I encounter a shortage of time, or I encounter a barrier or a limitation. And so instead of getting all freaked out about that and stressed out about that, it's kind of like, so what is this? What is this here to teach me? What if this is just another stepping stone towards, getting more insight, experiencing the unfolding gift or whatnot. So I use a lot of for myself, a lot of positive reframing as well. And I try to stay out of the reactive mind and more and leaning more into the creative possibilities that may evolve out of the situation. And the beauty of all of this is we cannot control life and its situations, but for sure we can control our attitude, right? And the choices we make. And so I
Mm,
find that there's a lot of agency in that. Just staying back or sitting back a little bit, take a breath, not necessarily reacting into all that is going wrong and either playing the victim role or the villain role or the hero role, but just sitting back and go, so what's the opportunity that wants to emerge over here? What's the possibilities? What is the next step that I can do to be able to be of service? So those questions help me a lot. And it really has helped me to shift my energy from a fear-based energy into more of a proactive energy.
yeah, it makes me think of, Viktor Frankl and some of his work, Man's Search for Meaning.
I got,
This
yeah.
Yeah, and just kinda that well, big takeaway there, which comes, I think, essentially from CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy is like that, the gap between the stimulus and response, right? So not being reactive, but choosing to respond, I think is kind of what you're describing, which is, again, it's easier said than done,
Yeah.
I guess
Yeah.
is one way to put it. But, you know, I think just to hammer home this point for people, because it's such for me personally, in my experiences, I go on through different businesses and throughout my career and working with different businesses, it's a point that I just see get made over and over and over again. And I don't want people to gloss over when they hear this. And I think a lot of times you need to have that emotional connection or that feeling to really bring the point home. And I had this thought recently. I'd be really interested to get your take on. I think it's relevant for this little micro topic we're on right now, which is I think a lot of people try to avoid suffering, avoid pain. And another way I've heard that put is is that actually pain is a constant. Pain is just a part of life. And you have the pain of stagnation or the pain of growth. And so you don't get to choose whether or not you do or don't have pain in your life. And that's again, just I don't want to get lost in semantics, but the real choice is in what purpose is attached to that pain. What is the meaning behind it? Is it the pain of growth or is it the pain? Is it, and to me, that my personal take on that is that that's really where the suffering comes from is when you play the victim card and you don't take responsibility or take control for the things that you actually have some influence over.
Yeah.
I hear a lot of that in what you're saying, but I wonder, does that resonate or
You know,
is there a specific feeling or moment or something
yeah.
that you can share that might help to kind of cement that lesson or that did help to cement it for yourself? Like a pivotal, I don't know, or did it just happen over time?
No, no, I know. I think pain plays a very important role in our lives. But it's when you get stuck in the pain and when you perpetuate that suffering is occurring, right? So I think pain is great. It's a great kind of like stimulus to get your attention. And whether it's emotional pain or physical pain is probably easier to conceptualize because you put your hand on a burning plate and you're not going to wallow around there and go, what's going on? And oh my gosh, it's burning. And it keeps on burning. You're gonna stop that. You're gonna follow up with an appropriate response to that stimulus of pain that you are getting. And yet, from an emotional perspective, we are not really all that well trained, or even trained is not the right word, but we don't have that natural kind of
Conditioned.
invocation to get away from the stimulus. We wallow in that, we sit in that, and then it becomes worse and worse and worse, and we are in a downward spiral. So for me, if I observe pain in my own life, It's kind of what is it supposed to teach me? And then also the most important thing, something that I really learned in the later stages of my life, is to understand that feeling is healing. And if you can sit with the pain for a little bit and you feel it in your body, you embody that. You feel where it is. You identify the form, the function, the location. Sometimes even the color of the pain. Is it black? Is it red? Is it moving? Is it stagnant? Is it staying? Is it growing? Is it diminishing? And just sit with that and let it travel through your body. Then I feel one can learn from that in terms of, well, why was it so painful? Why has this triggered a response in me? Or why did it kind of like punch me right in the gut? Or why was it a heart wrenching experience? And so just to sit with that, the feeling is healing. And then to be able to really feel the feelings and to understand that pain is kind of like a knock on the emotional door to be able to say, here's a warning sign. Pay attention to this. Don't put it in underneath the rock. Don't push it away, and certainly don't wallow in it. But do something with that so that you can so that you can facilitate an appropriate response, whatever that may be.
Yeah,
And
well,
sometimes it happens like, you might have, for me at least, I've been excellent in kind of like, putting more of myself into work related tasks and more achievement and more productivity and more efficiency and more time management skills and steering away from the knocks that I got, on my heart center until it became of such that I could not steer away anymore. I had to address it. And that's not where we want to be. We don't want to get to a stage in life where you are between a rock and a hard place. So we want to pay attention to those stimuli. And so I'm much more responsive to something that is, emotionally upsetting to me or negative to me, much more responsive in terms of, wow, what do I need to learn here? What is
as
going on?
opposed to reactive.
As
Yeah.
opposed to reacting or avoiding it and just moving on, putting it aside and go push some weights. I love lifting weights, but dealing with it as well.
Yeah, I know. You're the picture of fitness over here. But I think just for my own sake, even like to to just further define like avoiding something to me, again, the reason I would use the word react is because if you intentionally choose to avoid something, as in cut it out or remove it from you, that to me is a response. It's an informed, intentional, who knows what the thing is, but because maybe it's easier to avoid putting, I don't know how the burn your hand on the hot plate thing is gonna work out with this analogy here, but there might be some situations where it is easier to just avoid it altogether, and maybe that's an informed decision. I think the important piece that I'm hearing from you is that you have processed that, you have chosen, there's that space that you've created to make that informed, decision for yourself, and it's what's interesting is kind of coloring or labeling pain or different stimuli, I think helps to create some of that space. And so to kind of segue in here to speaking of creating space, so there's that the sort of values, alignment, prioritization, goals, things like that that are maybe at times maybe a little less tangible. And so for to kind of move more in that direction, especially for people listening that are like, wow, you have what I would call multiple full-time jobs. That's what I think some people might say. And so I guess, but the next question is sort of related to the focus priorities one, but in a real practical sense, like how do you create the space for your coach? What does that actually look like if we were to get really specific? Like, how does that actually fit into your like incredibly busy schedule to do the work that you do as a coach, build the business?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great question. I hold myself accountable to the principle of integrity first, because I have multiple jobs and I have multiple responsibilities, and I see myself as an accountable and a credible person, right? So I try to operate from the principles of honesty and integrity. What does that mean? It means that if I am in my full-time professional academic career, I am in my full-time professional academic career, and I do due diligence in the best way that I can. And so I have to schedule time for these other activities. And so my coaching activities are happening over weekends And then, in the evenings, and specifically on Wednesday evenings, that I have a 3 hour time slot open for coaching. So that's why it's also a part-time gig for me at this point in time. It's not a full-time thing, right? I just don't have the time to do it full-time. But so, and then when I'm coaching, I am 100% dealing with it with integrity. I empty myself from anything else that may be distracting or detracting my attention, and I'm fully present. I'm fully there. I am totally 100% in the present moment and aware of me and the person opposite me. You wanted to
How do you
ask
do that?
something?
How do you do it? Yeah, tell me that. Tell me how.
Yeah. So a very interesting and a very quick technique is to invite focused awareness within your being, right? And so we can do that by means of, you and I can do it right now. We're going to increase your focused awareness. And I want you to hold your index finger and your thumb together on both hands and just start rubbing it. And as you do that, just come into mindful breaths and feel the sensation of your fingers rubbing. Feel the indents of your little fingerprints. Take deep breaths and just feel the warmth or the temperature of your skin. And now,
It's cold in New York, but yes, I'm with you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So 30 seconds and you are here. You're not right now thinking about what you're going to eat for lunch. You are here with me. You are absolutely here with me. So very simple, focused awareness activity. That's a short-term thing. Long-term, I think you need to be grounded and you need to be centered. Head, heart, hands aligned, right? And that's my morning routine. I get up in the mornings at 5 o'clock. From 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock, I do the Julia Cameron, creative artist way. I write 3 pages of whatever it is that is coming in my mind. It's automatic writing. And there's specific exercises that you need to do. And this is also going hand in hand with Robin Sharma's 5 a.m. club. So I get the stuff out that is either infusing limiting thoughts or that is restraining me or that is upsetting me. And I invite with intention an incredible day to unfold for me with priorities, and usually like 3 or 4 priorities. So that's more on the long term. That's what I do as a daily practice.
And when you say long term, I just want to make sure because I there's so many things that I agree with from my own personal experience. I mean, coming from the sports psychology world, working with entrepreneurs, the ability to eliminate distractions on one side and kind of delete stuff, but then also that presence, which I think is almost the other side of the same coin. It's almost a different way of saying the same thing. But because again, like you bring your attention, it's like that spotlight effect. You bring your attention to the friction between your finger. Like when you focus the mind on something, you have something to focus on. The other things start to just kind of slip into the background rather than the foreground. And so the other thing I want to point out here and make sure I heard you right, and for people listening as well, is when you say long term, that doesn't mean delayed in the future. I'll do this later. It actually means short term, consistent, frequent
Sustainable practice.
it's a habit. That's really what we're talking. Yeah, it's a practice, exactly.
It's a
And so
sustainable practice.
yes, and you're doing it daily.
I'm doing it daily. Yeah. And sometimes we're not perfect human beings, right? To be human is to err. I want to say at least 6 out of the 7 days. But if I don't have an hour that I can devote to my intention setting for the day, I will do a very quick jot in my gratitude journal or in my bucket list journal or in my everyday journal. I've got 3 journals and I use them kind of like, I've used them intermittently. But I will do a real quick 3. What am I really grateful for today? What do I appreciate about life?
Yeah, and to me again, it's the rather than focus on the task, it brings your focus back to your values and that values alignment. That's
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
In
And,
terms
and
of
that just brings me to another. I
yeah, go.
really, 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 really strongly encourage our listeners and anybody to be able to make sure that they know what their values are. especially their Uber values. It is so, so, so important,
What
and
do you mean by Uber values?
to have a symbol that they can keep these values alive. Like I'm wearing the Peruvian chacana, which is the Peruvian three-dimensional cross, right? And so this is the symbol of my values right here. It's got four corners, and on each one of those four corners, I've got a W attached. And the W that's basically directing my four values. The four W's are wellness, wisdom, wonder, and wealth. And if I make my decisions, my subjective, my objective, my daily, my weekly, my monthly decisions, they are fitting within those four W's. And anything else that's not really fitting into that, they are not making my priority list. It's not that I won't entertain them, but I need to live a life, not just of focus and intention, but also a principle based life that is oriented towards my values so that I can hold myself accountability to live this life with integrity.
I have to admit, I half expected winner to be one of the W's are winning for you because you're has anyone ever given you the nickname Sherrilene the Machine? Because I feel like you just especially in your fitness classes, no one says that to you?
Yeah, I've been called many things. I don't want to go into that right now.
That
Yeah.
that's total
Yeah.
that's totally fine. But yeah, I love that, and I love the symbol. Again, makes me think of sports psychology. We would have like a cue is what we would call it. And then like a baseball, it might be taking off your catching glove and putting on your hitting glove to switch from defense to offense. So again, it's something to focus the mind. And again, that's more short term. Yours is more long term, but it's always in the moment because that's,
Yes.
in my opinion, although I don't know how you can argue with it, it's kind of all we have. Anything you ever have
Exactly.
done or will do is always right now. So
That
that
is just so true.
that said, what right now, and I don't actually mean this specific moment while we're talking, but in terms of kind of day to day or week to week, can you share anything in terms of let's say there's someone listening who's like, okay, I don't fit nearly that many things in. I definitely have space, or I now am able to kind of create some space. I know how to schedule some things, or maybe they need some help with that, but whatever. They kind of thinking about, well, what do I actually do? They already have that space. They're trying to fill it in. You are able to coach, I think you said kind of part-time just because of the number of things that you fit into your schedule, and I'd like to talk about more about that in a second, but the kind of the business side of things, because in terms of just finding clients to coach or creating a curriculum, like I know you have a program that you've developed, and
Yep.
I'd love to hear more about that, but even just like the space to do those things and what you're filling that with in terms of the business development or having a conversation or a consult. What does that look like for you so far, or what will it look like moving forward?
Yeah. So I think creative visualization is important, right? And so I think you need to have a big picture idea, but then you also need to make sure that you are realistic in terms of the steps that you are using to be able to get to that higher level of strategic thinking. So your operations and your tactic needs to be of such, mine needs to be of such that I can operate within what I just described as my value orientation. So for me, what it looked like is, I've staged it over a process. And for the first year, I've developed my website and I did a lot of free sessions with clients to be able to let them see that I'm transitioning from this academic scientist, leader in the field that I'm in into taking a coaching perspective and that I am a transformational coach. And to establish my own identity in that, I have to feel like a transformational coach to be able to act like that. So for the first year, I think I gave 60 sessions for clients I did it for free. I didn't charge anything. I started the walking group 4 years ago. It's all free, not charging anything. And I started the book club and it's all free, not charging anything. But that to me were kind of like nice ways to get involved in my community with community service and to start building up my networks other than my academic network, to be able to let people see that, if we live an inspired life, transformation can flow from that. So that was last year. This year, sorry, this was 2023. 2024, I said, okay, in 2024, I'm going to give away 24 free coaching sessions, and then I'm going to start moving towards getting paid sessions. So I had a plan in terms of what that would look like and how I would do that. And it was later on in the year that it got to me that it's like, man, with your time that's being so precious. And, how can I use the economy of scales to be able to be of service to the most people that I can? And that's why I decided, and because I'm a trained occupational therapist, I know how to manage groups. And I know how to present a group. So I decided, wow, I can do groups. I can do this stuff in groups. And when that idea came, I really got very excited about that. But excitement is only the first step. So I started planning, and over a period of 12 weeks, I started developing the content of the groups. I worked with an external a consultant, a friend of mine that a few years ago did her MBA, and she's running her consultation practice. And so I hired her to be able to help me with the marketing aspects of this. And we started marketing in November. And my target goal, particularly for this group, the women's empowerment group that I wanted to launch, I wanted 10. I wanted 10 women because I felt I could really make it personal and that it wouldn't be too crowded. Plus, it's also the first group that we are doing. The group is starting next week, and I've got 8 and one very strong potential participant that I'm meeting with very, very soon. So, so I feel happy about that. Can I open it up for 20? Can I handle 30? Probably so. But I want to do it right. And I want to do it to the best of my ability and providing to the participants the best personalized attention that I can. So that's kind of like taking it from the macro idea and boiling it down to the micro idea. And so what do I have right now? So I've got 8 paid participants upfront, everything. The money is in the bank, right? Through my website, my integrated website that it took me about a year to set up and to learn all of these tricks. I'm now starting to ask money for my service because I feel my services are very valuable. And the fact that 8 people registered and paid in full tell me that they think the same way in terms of that. I have got my whole course, my whole program is developed. And I've got 10 incredible sessions. And now I can every week before I present a session, I can tweak and I can fine tune and I can add in little things that I feel need to be added in and so forth. But my energy is that I'm looking so forward to that. I'm so excited to be able to do this. It's an energy of fearfulness or of limitation, and pretty much like your energy. If snafus are happening, whether it's technology or whatnot, we'll deal with that. We make the best that we can on that spot, right? So I hope that gives you a little bit of an example of what you have asked me. And if not, please feel free to ask follow-up questions.
It's 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 so many examples, and I only wish we had more time to tease all of them out for people, but I the things I just wanna highlight and make sure that, again, that I've heard correctly, but also for people listening, I don't want them to just gloss over because there's so many nuggets in there. Number 1 is just recognizing that, to do something right, it takes time.
Yep.
It just takes time. I mean, what you just described is a
Yep.
multiple years process. And, obviously you are doing so many other things at the same time. And it kind of makes me think of the easiest way I can say it is just it requires a certain number of hours. And whether those hours are spread out over years or crunched into a matter of months, the hours are the hours. And there might be a couple things you can add or take away here and there, but for the most part, you have to be willing to put in the time. And because of how your life, your values, your schedule, all of that is set up, that is where you disperse those hours. And I mean, that's something, we help people focus on the right things over the right in the right order and with the right timing to kind of condense that time schedule. But it is for sure a commitment. And whether you are committed over a 6 month period or like yourself, you've been committed over multiple years, it still requires the commitment. Like the commitment's the commitment.
That's
And
right.
so
Yep.
that whether you want to call it patience or just to set the expectation for people. Sounds like you have had that for a long time, but for anyone listening, I just want to like really highlight that. And then secondly, it's, like your whether it's your website or the marketing you've been doing, there's there's things that happen behind the scenes that people don't really
Absolutely.
realize. And a lot of times we can see a website, and I know you haven't been as public about your coaching, and this I'd love to end with this as well, kind of let people know where you're at, what you're doing at the time of this recording. But just because you can't see everything doesn't mean that there's it's like the duck calm on top of the water. Is it a duck or a
Yeah.
swan? Either way, a bird on water. And underneath they're kicking their feet and swimming real hard. And
Right.
that's the I think hard is subjective, but I think that goes back to where if you're passionate about what you're doing, if you feel like I get to do this
Yes.
and it it becomes there's now purpose attached and meaning attached to the quote unquote pain that comes with something being quote unquote hard. So there are so many things in there that I could unpack that I would get passionate about, but for time's sake, let me skip to asking that question. You've been doing
Yeah.
all this. We've talked a little bit about transition. Tell people what that means and what your plans are moving forward. Where are you going? What are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah. So I will be transitioning by mid-year out of my full-time academic leadership position into a very part-time position at the university because I do have some grants that I need to see through and some PhD students that need to graduate. So, but this would give me about 3 days a week that I can do the stuff that I love to do, want to do, looking forward to be doing. So July 31st is when I will be stepping down as chair and as a full-time faculty member. As from August onwards, like I said, I will have this opportunity, which I see as a privilege and a joy and a prerogative to embrace and to really put more attention towards my coaching, but also my other goals of working towards climbing all 7 summits and continuing with my exercise classes. So yeah, and so yeah, I also just want to say this transitioning process deciding, especially because, I'm not at the retirement age. It was, it came with came with a long-term perspective. It came with very good financial decisions, working with a financial consultant and also planning about 3 years ahead of time, just roughly in terms of how do I want to exit? When do I want to exit? And the most important thing is how do I exit? I want to exit just like I started. I started with excitement and integrity. I want to exit with integrity and with excitement, right? And making sure that there's a succession plan and sustain in a sustainable way that a department can continue until the next leader is there. So that's very, very important for me. Very important. And I don't want to do anything to jeopardize that. And that's why I'm also, as I'm kind of like tapering off on my academic life, I'm starting to scale up in terms of my coaching business and my coaching practices and the things that I do there.
It's so apparent for listening as people listen to you. I think it is just so obvious how grounded you are in your values and what you're doing. It's like you are a rock. And I think that whether people are watching or listening to this and they have never experienced coaching or consulting, and that's something they're actually looking for, I think that is a green flag. Is if someone is practicing what they preach, that is a good sign. And then for other coaches and consultants, people in the helping space that are tuning in, I just I love how you were modeling again. It's the practice what you preach, but also it's that recognition that just because I am a helper doesn't mean I don't need help. Throughout our conversation, I've heard you
Yeah.
say, I hired this consultant. I've worked with this person. I'm being
Yeah.
proactive and thinking ahead and thinking forward. And I think integrity is a really great word to kind of sum all of that up. And so I really just want to end by saying thank you for modeling that and just showing people what that actually looks like and feels like. They don't have to wake up at 5 a.m. for the record to to have that. But to each their own, and that's what works for you because you get to wake up at 5 a.m. And I love
Yes.
that perspective. So thanks, just thank you for taking the time, Sherrilene, to join us and have this conversation today.
I appreciate it, Ronnie. It was fun talking to you. Thank you for being so very, very natural and calming and humorous and making me feel at ease. And also, thank you for your thoughtful questions and also your analytical mind in terms how you are appraising the answers and bringing light to that. That's an awesome talent and a gift that you have. So thank you.